Hi guys, and welcome back to Sheddy's Kitchen. I'm Sheddy. Today we're looking at making a Keema Matar curry. We are using, specifically in this case, chicken. So it's a chicken mince with pea curry. It goes really well with our chapatti recipe, our paratha recipe, and it is a very low in calories, so perfect for you slimmers out there. So are you ready? Let's get cooking. So let's start with getting together our ingredients. We need to start off with 300 ml of sunflower oil, ,300 grams of chopped onions, and you can see here you don't have to go absolutely fine with it, and they can be roughly chopped. 1.5 teaspoons of red chili powder, ,2 teaspoons of turmeric powder. This is known as haldi. ,1.5 teaspoons of cooking salt, ,200 grams of peeled chopped tomatoes, ,3 teaspoons of crushed garlic. And what we've done there, we've made that ourselves at home. You can actually get these in jars, pre-crushed, and you can just use teaspoons from there directly, but we've made ours fresh. We always find that using fresh ones better at home. ,2 teaspoons of crushed ginger. Again, with this we've crushed this at home using a mortar and pestle, but you can buy these in jars already pre-crushed. 3 medium-sized tomatoes that have been chopped, ,2 teaspoons of coriander powder, ,3 green chilies. And what we're going to do with these green chilies are we are going to just chop these down. You don't need to go any further, you can just finely chop them and pop them in. ,1.5 kilos of chicken mince. We're using chicken mince for this one. This is chicken thigh. ,3 pointy green peppers, and with this what you need to do is to cut them into halves like that. 400 grams of frozen peas. I won't tilt that too far forward. What we're going to do with these in preparation is we'll put them into some lukewarm water. If you want to use fresh peas you can. We use frozen peas for this. 300 ml of water. Keep some water at hand extra during the cooking process, because at times when you do need to add a tiny bit of water to prevent any of the ingredients sticking to the bottom of the pan, you want to make sure you've got some extra water at hand. But 300 ml will be needed at one point during the course of us making that dish. 25 grams of fresh coriander, make sure that's washed. And we've chopped that roughly again, as you can see. And last but not least, you need 1 teaspoon of cumin powder, and that's known as jeera. Right, so ready for the long haul on this dish. We'll start off with getting yourself a nice big pan over here to cook in. There's a lot going in here today, so it's better to make sure you've got a pan with a lot of space. It's just easy to stir when we get working on this dish. So make sure you get onto a high heat first. So nice high heat, and into there will go your sunflower oil. I'm going to leave that sunflower oil in there for a bit, just to start warming up before we add the next ingredient. Okay, starting to see a few bubbles in the oil now, so we can go ahead and add the onions to that. With the onions, we want it to start browning slightly in there, so we'll start mixing that in. So we'll pop in the onions. While you're making this dish, because there's a lot going on with a lot of the various ingredients that go in, I'd advise you to maybe open up an extractor, have an extractor fan running, or open up some windows, because you'll get quite concentrated smells. And just be wary that the last thing you're going to do is cough and splutter if you're over the pan itself. Certainly when we add some ingredients and they shoot up into the air. We'll give that a nice mix in the oil. We're going to let that onion brown very slightly next. We're just letting the onions soften up a tiny bit. We don't want them going too brown. Just give it a little mix again. They are starting to soften. It smells that lovely smell of the onion softening and starting to brown very slightly, but we want them browner than this. You probably see some of the onions starting to brown around the edges now, so we're quite close to adding the next ingredients. You can see them over there. You can give it a mix so that the onions don't stick, but we will be adding very shortly the next 3 ingredients to this dish. Okay, time to add now the next 3 ingredients. We need the red chili powder. I'd be wary not to put your face straight over the dish here, because it will, with it being really hot, it will come up into the air and it can really set you off with your coughing, so just be wary. You need 1.5 teaspoons of red chili powder. You'll need half a teaspoon of turmeric powder, the healthy powder. Use a separate spoon for this, because it has a tendency to really discolour a lot of your dishes. I tend to try to use the same one all the time. And you need 1.5 teaspoons of cooking salt. Give that a good mix. Still plenty of water in there, so it's not sticking to the bottom. It's worth keeping a glass of water nearby if you ever get to the stage where you can really feel the ingredients sticking to the bottom of the pan. But we've got plenty of moisture in there, plenty of water in there at the moment. To that I'll add 200 grams of the tomato tin tomato into there. This is half a pan for me. A lot of water in there, so I'm not too worried about it sticking at the moment. And give that a good mix for a few minutes. So the main purpose of this bit is to allow the water from the tin tomato that we've added to reduce down, and it's starting to reduce down now anyway. We're going to add the next part of the ingredients, and to this what you need to include in here is your garlic and your ginger. So it's 3 teaspoons of the crushed garlic in this case we're going to pop into there. And it's going to be 2 teaspoons of your crushed ginger. Put nothing else. You give that a nice mix now. Still got a decent amount of water in that, that's alright. Just as long as we're not sticking to the bottom of the pan. Give it a nice mix. Really get a uniform mix in there of all the ingredients. It is really concentrated at this moment in time. So do make sure your windows are open, you've got extractor fans on, so you're not letting that smell travel and catch onto your, it's going to catch onto your clothes regardless. So if you had any coat or anything like that that's hung up anywhere close by, make sure that is out of the way in a different room. Right, the water's reducing down a fair bit now. I'm feeling it stick very slightly to the bottom. I'm going to add the next few ingredients. That will reintroduce some of the water into there, which is good. The next thing we're going to add into there are the fresh tomatoes. I'll add some of the water into there for us. We're going to add 2 teaspoons of the coriander powder. And I'm going to add the green chili, the original green chili. Now, I'd said 3 before, but when we cut them we realised they were really chilly. So we're going to put a bit less than 3 in there, but normally you can get that from your, when you get chilies normally they're not as chilly as these. These were crazy chilly. When we cut them you can really feel it come up into your airways and left me coughing and spluttering. So you can have less chilies in there. That's your choice, it's absolutely your preference. 3 was normally fine, but you can judge that from when you cut them. You should be able to taste it very slightly to see how chilly they actually are. And give that a real mix. Still plenty of moisture in there. The tomatoes are bringing that water back into there and preventing the sticking to the bottom of the pan. So always important in all the dishes that I do, all the curry dishes, is this consistency of making sure that the ingredients don't stick to the bottom of the pan, because the minute they start burning you've lost the curry completely. So don't be fearful to add a little splash of water in if you feel it's sticking, and it has to really be sticky. If it's slightly sticky at the bottom, that's not a big thing, you can keep mixing that. Now we're trying to soften up these ingredients now. They're going to soften up and turn quite mushy. That's what we're aiming for. Okay, so you can see here the water's reduced down a lot now. We've added a tiny bit of water to it because it's sticking slightly at the bottom, but it's time to add the minced chicken thigh to this dish. You can see there, you can see the oil's coming up now, most of the water's gone, and this is our indicator that we added the next ingredient. So let's add in the mince to that. I'm going to mix that for a bit. So we've added the chicken mince into there. Now, obviously this has been quite stuck fast together. Really give it a mix. I am going to add a tiny bit of water. I'm going to add a tiny bit of water to this. And there's a reason for that. The reason to add in that water is that often the mince pieces get quite clumped together and you don't want them clumpy, you need to break them down. We've added that water to that to avoid the clumping from happening. Really break that down, because all these ingredients we've added originally are being taken up by the meat. It'll get stuck in, I would say, to really mix it. It's taking up all them lovely flavours. So anywhere you can spot that the mince is clumping, just press them down and break them into, separate them out. A very, well, I think it's a funny story anyway, I'll tell you. I like telling my stories. And I won't name and shame anyone, but many years ago when I was in secondary school, I remember, and this is talking about the word mince here, I remember it was towards Christmas time and it was lunchtime, and I got into an argument with a friend of mine who was insistent that the word mince meant that it had mince meat in it, and I really wanted a mince pies at school, and he kept on saying mince means it's got mince meat in it. I said no, the word mince actually doesn't mean that. It does mean that it's into smaller pieces or tiny little pieces, but the dinner lady at the time resolved that and let him know that I was right, but I'm not going to name and shame, because I've probably been wrong with a lot of stuff as well over my time. I only said that because I love mince pies, so. I think school dinners were the best, really. I think they're the highlight of primary school and secondary school for me, with the dinners. So you can see in this dish at the moment now that the water has gone down considerably. We've been leaving it for 15 minutes. It depends on how much ingredients you're using for yours, but we've left it for 15 minutes based on 1.5 kilos of the mince. Now you can see, hopefully here, there are bits of oil that are bubbling to the surface. Most of the water has gone out of this. So to this we're going to add now our pointy green peppers. I'll pop them in. Give that a little mix, let them soften up a tiny bit. If you want to cut them into fours, you can cut them into fours. I did say you slice them into twos, but you're welcome to cut them further down. And give that a bit of a mix, only for about a minute or so. And then I'm going to add the peas to this. And once I've added the peas to it, we need to make sure that the peas have time to cook in this as well. And we'll leave this for approximately 5 minutes in the background. I'll mix the peppers in. I'll go grab the peas. And we'll add them into it as well and give these a real mix. Once I've mixed them, we will leave this for 5 minutes for the peas and the peppers to start softening and cooking at the same time. Give it a real mix. There we go, so I'm going to leave that for 5 minutes now. So we've mixed the peas into there now. And I'm just going to keep mixing that for the next 5 minutes to make sure the peas have a chance of cooking in there. Just keep giving it a mix every so often for the next 5 minutes. And keep an eye on the bottom of the pan. If there's any sticking, you can add a bit of water. But just keep mixing for about 5 minutes. So this has been cooking away for a bit over 5 minutes now, and we've got a very good indicator here towards the back. Over here you can see the bubbles of oil coming up. Does that mean the most of water moisture has been reduced down? And at this point over here we've still got it on a high heat. I'm going to add 300 ml of the water that we originally said. This water needs to boil before we lower the heat onto a medium heat. So I've added that 300 ml of water to give it a real mix, but we want that water to start boiling. And when it starts boiling, I will add the next ingredient in, which is the fresh coriander, and I'll drop this onto a medium heat for approximately 2 minutes with the lid on. So we'll just wait for that, let this start boiling now, give it a good mix. I'll wait till it starts boiling before we add the next bit on. Okay, so that's boiling quite quickly now. You can see the bubbles coming up at the surface. I'm going to add the fresh coriander to that, give that a real good mix, and drop that onto a medium heat and place a lid on the top and leave it for approximately 2 minutes before we turn the heat off completely. So let's just do that now, give that a mix. Add a lovely mix there. Pop that onto a medium heat now. And just cover the saucepan with the lid. In 2 minutes time we can take that off heat completely, and we'll add the jeera, the 1 teaspoon of jeera as a final thing, and we'll mix that in. I've left it a bit longer than 2 minutes just to let it stew a bit longer because we've got more meat in there, but it is time for us to finish this dish off. I'm just going to take it off heat completely, and we've got one final ingredient we want to add to that, and that was the cumin powder, so 1 teaspoon. That's the jeera. We'll add 1 teaspoon of that on there, give that a real lovely mix in, and then we are ready to plate up this lovely dish. A nice mix in there, and that is now complete. This looks absolutely amazing, particularly in this dish as well, doesn't it? So it's time to get my parents' reaction. Parent approval met. So for many more recipes, make sure you subscribe to my channel, click that notification bell, and I'll see you soon.